here. I'm going to do a quick introduction. Alex Lunney, part of the North Chatham Historical Society. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the North Chatham Historical Society. If you're not already a member, think about joining us to support us and get on our mailing list for local events. Membership starts at only $10, so it's pretty good. So pre-pandemic prices. A couple of notes on future events. We have North Chatham Day coming up on October 19th in the village. And the North Chatham Historical Society will be having a Yes Virginia program again coming in December. So keep your eyes out for that.
Inside.
Yeah, yeah, details to follow.
Okay.
Special thanks to George Volbeth over in the corner. Without him, we would not have the Historical Society, we would not have this Trolley station, so we're deeply indebted to you, and we're so happy that you could join us here today. And thanks to the fellow members of the programming committee to make this happen, and especially to Lynn Mitchison. Lynn literally wrote the book on the schoolhouse. We have copies of her book available to purchase in the back, and at the end, please feel free. They're $20.
And we decided an extra $50 if I sign it.
Yeah. So Lynn is not only a laureate of the school, but she went to the North Chatham School herself, of course, and I'm going to hand it over to you. I don't want to steal any of your thunder. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you. I am really touched to have George here today. I'm pleased to see you all, but George, it's great to have you here. When I started this project, George and I gave birth to it. I decided, well, how am I going to do this? And so I sat down and I wrote down the names of the kids in my class and the names of the kids in my brother's class. And then it's like, well, let's see, this one was younger, this one was younger. And I started compiling a list. And then I called people, like I'm a sleuth, and I said, who do you remember? And I came up with this list, which was amazing to find all these people. And then I sent them letters or text them or phone them. And this is what I got. Wow. It was just amazing to get all these letters and have them tell about other things in town. But, you know, I was asking about the school. So I'll put this out. Please don't take anything out of an envelope you don't put back in, but you're welcome to look at them. Then I got thinking about, well, certain people, sort of all this class, a little crazy going along by. So I just want to confirm it today. So this is little Lynn Huntley that went to the school. You see her braids there? Okay, here's the really crazy part. I just happened to have them.
Oh my God.
Someone says that's a little weird. Anyway, my mother thought I should keep them in, and I was an obedient child. Here they are. We have letters, we have braids, we have a little bit picture. So if you attended the North Chatham School, raise your hand. Oh, look at here. Emma and Carol and Vicki and Tammy and me. That's great.
Well, your year was a lot younger than some of us.
Oh, Tammy's was even younger. So this is an informal gathering. So anytime you like, just like in school, if you have something to say, raise your hand, and we'll call on you. You don't necessarily have to come up front, but we'll call on you. Lore is defined as tradition and subject on a matter. person by word of mouth. In working with George on his book about the school, it was clear that he is an amazing historian. It also was very clear to me that that isn't really what I am, or how I look at myself. And I decided that I am a Lorian, one who tells and passes along the stories of the community. As the North Chatham Historical Society Committee met for this event, we discussed this program, and it became clear to me that I want to tell you about some people in the community that helped make it what it is today, all of whom were involved with the school. There are people like Vicki, Arnold, Will's grandparents, Hubert and Mary Arnold, who brought many good things to North Chatham. Herman and Betty Huntley, my folks, gave to the community in many ways through the fire company, the church, and leading the Buccaneers 4-H Club for over 30 years, helping to shape and educate youth in the area. Henrietta Douglas is another who gave so much to the community, not only as a wonderful teacher at the school, but many other things in the hamlet, like starting the library story hour and giving me her recipe for Crimpton and frapping. Just saying. There are many others, but today I would like for you to come to know John Ring, the man who built the school, through the lore I will share with you. Mr. Ring created wonder in my heart. He was small in stature, soft-spoken, and always choosing his words carefully. It was my great fortune to grow up next door to him. I never knew him as a young man, but here he is, this dapper gent, as a young man. With this, his granddaughter, Judy Danny Wilson, shared these photos with me. Judy and I have been best friends all of our lives, well, so far. Her mom and my mom also lived next door to each other and were lifelong friends. Mr. Ring, as we all knew him, was a part of all of our lives. He built Rings Park, which was on the south end of Bunker Hill Road. I just happen to have a picture. This is Rings Park in its day. I'm going to put the picture up here so you can see it afterwards. But it was wonderful. I remember my mom and Mary talking about, the slide going into the water. But by the time I came along, the dam was out and the slide had been moved to higher ground.
Excuse me, Lynn.
Oh,
Are you going to elaborate on Rings Park at all?
well,
I mean, there used to be boats there and a log there. We used to go swimming. I lived over there in the summertime in my wool bathing suit. And we used to take the boat and go up around the corner to what we call the deep hole, and we'd lay on the boat and catch frogs and bring them down. But we had Sunday school picnics there every year, and I mean, we just grew up living in Rings Park when we were.
all the kids did.
And I had a picture for a long time, I think I gave it of Lynn as a little girl in a hammock in the park, and I was her teacher. But anyway, it was a wonderful day.
I think someday we should do a whole program on Rings Park because it was such a huge, huge part of the makeup of the community and in the lives of so many of us. Mr. Ring made a cinder tennis court north of his house for the local kids. He built a wooden boat that Emma just mentioned on a creek that everyone was welcome to. And when I was a baby, I just happened to this is a turtle, and his legs. He was a string toy, you know, you pull him with a string. It's just the sweetest thing that I have loved forever, so we'll put this out for you to see too. What else did Mr. Ray do? He had tropical lilies in Lotus Pond, little ponds in his yard, and he had a fish worm bed where we could dig fish worms and feed them to the pet frogs in the lily pond. He was always interested in nature and identifying plants and animals and birds and sharing his knowledge with anyone interested. Judy and I came upon him one day, and he was standing in a little swamp by his shop, and he had his hands behind his back. Now, what do you think two little girls thought of that? Gee, Grandpa, said Mr. Ring, what are you doing? And he said, I'm watching and listening. And that in itself was a good lesson for two little girls. It was a big deal when I remember on his 80th birthday, he donned his ice skates and skated on the creek. That creek where he had skated all his life, and I bet Emma did too. Right? Skated on the creek.
I don't remember skating. The dam had broken, you know, in the later years. And
I remember skating on the creek and the fire.
But then I'm older than you. I'm forgetful.
Good thing I wrote this down. In my young life, before the thruway was built, that changed the course of the creek, we skated from Cavalieros, which was where the Davis family lived, as generations have done, from that house all the way down to the creek and back. John, like his father, Abram Ring, built the church years before. He became a carpenter, building and working on houses in this area. And in 1910, he built our schoolhouse. The previous school was in what is now Kim Brethen's barn, formerly the Stoners. Our local craftsman, David Caballero, who will not raise his hand, even though I'd like him to stand, David also did over this building. He did over the school for Polly and Gordon Potts, who are Tammy Rouse's folks. He said that the building had high quality oak floors and balloon framing and that tall cobblestone foundation. David said that behind one of the huge slate back blackboards, he found John Ring's signature and a stick man drawn with a hawk full of plaster in his hand. And David said a true craftsman knew that signing his work was important. Now let's listen to Linda Romeo share some of the stories about attending the school. Would you please come up front, Linda? Okay. Have you done your homework? Yes, ma'am. Very good, very good.
You have. What I'm actually going to talk about is what the school looked like and what you would see when you went to school. Now, little fun fact, George and I went to the same school on Long Island. And we were part of the post-war baby boom. Now, to put this in my experiences in school are graduating of a class of 900 kids, and there were 2 high schools in the district. So the fact, I think it's fascinating that my peers could have gone to a 2-room schoolhouse in the same country, in the same state, is absolutely amazing. So, what did you see when you went to school? The school had 6 broad steps going up to double front doors. There were benches on either side of the doors on an open porch. The building was gray most of the time. For a while it was red, and now it's blue. As you entered the building, you were in a large hall. Off the hall to the right were the cellar stairs and the boys' cloakroom. Just past was the door to the big room. Off the hall to the left was the drinking fountain. After that was the girls' lavatory and the girls' cloakroom, and straight ahead was the door to the little room. Now, the rooms were the same size. The big and the little refers to the size of the students, not the room. Each classroom had 3 high, small windows in the back that had to be opened and closed with a long pole. There were 4 tall windows on the side of the room. Blackboards were in the front of the room on the side opposite the big windows. Above the blackboards were printed cursive alphabets and numbers for the students' reference. A very large picture of George Washington was on the room in one room, on the wall in one room, and Abraham Lincoln's picture was in the other room. Now, I don't know who was big and who was small. The youngest children sat in the front seats, the older ones in back. In the early days, the desks were wrought iron legs and wooden seats. In the 50s, they were made of steel and had wooden tops. Each child's desk was entirely self-contained. The desktop lifted nearly straight up. I'm gonna lift that bad boy up for demo. Oh, that's not a sorry.
This is the list of kind.
We have a second. But when you lifted the desktop, not only did you access what was in it, you also shielded yourself from temptation. So, as I understand, notes could be passed. Paper wads, you're much more polite than we are. We used to call them spitballs. And somebody in this room just might have received their first kiss. Oh. One of the students remembers more than anything the smell of the old building. When the sun used to come through the big windows in the afternoon, it warmed the linseed oil on the floor. And even today, when she enters an old building, it's the smell that gives her a safe and warm feeling. On the roof was a belfry with a school bell. There was a rope that came down through the ceiling of the big room that was used for ringing the bell. Each day it was rung in the morning to call the children to the school on time at precisely 8 o'clock. The bell was also rung at recess and after lunch to call the children back to classes. The bell, I think, still is in the building today.
Mrs. Potts asked if I would run the rope down into her side. She was planning to was made. She was planning to use that herself someday. And she wanted to be able to ring the bell, so it comes down in the corner as you first enter the park.
Really?
It's still usable.
It's still there, they just rang it the other day.
We have to work this into like something.
Yeah, it's still there.
How wonderful.
Now,
Tammy's here.
walking to school is what most of the kids did all the time. Now, I didn't realize how geographically large of an area it is. Out on Route 32, there's that stone silo. Kids used to walk from there. Alex and I live on Woodward Road. Kids used to walk from Woodward Road. I complain if I have to walk to the freeway. But, I guess one of the elder Margaret Irish rode her horse to school. Now, I'm assuming she's over on Irish Hill Road. No?
She was 28 feet.
Oh, well, still, that's a considerable distance. One of the students had to walk from Route 32 near the cemetery, and her impression of it was long walks from our house were wet in the storms of summer and spring, plus very hot, and then the opposite, very cold and snowy in the winter. Our feet got so cold we thought they would freeze. In 1950s, a bus was purchased. So until the 50s, you were responsible for getting to school yourself. Okay, who am I handing the microphone off to?
Thank you. Let's see. I don't think she gets any Roy.
Lynn, I'm wondering if there were other people in the room here that went to I went to a one-room school. You were more advanced here. Are there others in here that went to a one-room schoolhouse? No?
I'm sorry.
Did you go to a...
Red Mills, right?
Ryder's Mills.
Ryder's Mills.
It's still there.
Yeah.
I remember Mrs. Douglas bringing creativity to our school in many ways. She taught us our first experience in paper mache. It was a mess. And we made puppets. And masks. She really was amazing. Let me just put this over here. Does anyone have anything to share about games that were played at school? Oh, Vicki?
Mrs. Mitchison, my report is ready, I'm recessed.
Would you like to come up?
I would love that.
They're good?
Yeah.
My name is Vicki Arnold. I attended the school from 1957 to 1961, first through fourth grade. There were 2 grade levels in each room at that time. In first grade, Mrs. Henrietta Douglas was the teacher. She lived in a house across the street that, not Jennifer, but
Well, Jennifer and Alan are there now.
Jennifer is what John lives in now.
And that's where Mrs. Douglas made those brownies.
When I moved into the big room, Mrs. Douglas did also. So partway through fourth grade, we were part of that whole centralization that was going on. And they moved us to Martin Angel and Malaysia. At that time, we got lost. And Mrs. Douglas moved moved also. So I had Mrs. Douglas for 4 years. I mean, really. The schoolhouse was designated as a kindergarten after that time. You know, Mrs. Douglas was really good for me. She was always very kind, very understanding, and we did all sorts of interesting things. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my family. My dad, Arnold, attended the schoolhouse, maybe same time around some other people. In this time, there may have been 4 grades in one classroom. He attended 1st through 8th, I believe. Then he went to high school in kindergarten. That was at the Martin Van Buren High School then. After graduation, he was running a farm when he was called to fight in World War II at age 19. He returned and finished school at Siena College. Now his dad, these guys are all in this together, his dad, Hubert T. Arnold, moved here in 1906 when his father was pastor of the Methodist Episcopal Church. Hubert graduated from RPI, Susan's, his niece, grandniece. Hubert graduated from RPI with a civil engineering degree. He was first a surveyor from 1907 to 1920 for many of the roads in the state and the Erie Canal. Hubert could fix almost anything. He was just so creative, and the most complex problem, he could figure out a solution. He worked for GE, but he really didn't like having a boss. He was a very independent thinker. He bought the mill in 1920. That's 100 years ago, 120 years ago. He ran a sawmill there, the cider mill, sold coal, later oil. Hubert delivered coal to the school, usually during school hours. All teaching had to stop while coal was sliding down the chute into the basement. It made a racket. I remember my grandmother getting very upset with him for disturbing the classes. But Hubert always did what was best for him. That's just his perspective. Hubert was justice of the peace here in North Chatham for 29 years. He was on several trustee boards, including the infamous Society for the Prevention of Horse Thieves. He had the first card in North Chatham's 1906 Peerless Story. His most admirable trait was that he always had time to take us kids swimming, and he listened. All right, recess. I remember the merry-go-round. It was in the front, and the teeter-totter and slide and swings. The boys that went to the school must have passed on this knowledge to each younger generation, because if a girl got on and asked for a push, the boys would go faster and faster, and they wouldn't stop. You could scream and scream and scream. And I threw up. It was a valuable lesson in learning to trust. Or not. And that slide, the slide seems so tall. I don't even know if they make them that tall anymore. Marguerite Hoffman tells the story of how her dress got caught at the top of the slide. And as she slid down, the dress ripped all the way up to her waist. In those days, we had to wear dresses, which had to slip underneath, so her modesty was saved. But she only had 2 dresses. Over the years, there were some children who liked extreme sliding. They would sit on a piece of wax paper and slide fast, very slippery. The swings were just delightful. You could go so very high. Just to be sure, don't jump off, because you could break your leg. I remember sneaking down to play after school. You know, I lived on this dairy farm over here, and my mother had twins and another boy, and my dad was on the farm. They just couldn't keep track of where I was. So I always vice president, Sterling Winthrop, I think, and I don't know, maybe the little farm girl. Anyways, I just enjoyed that. It was great fun.
I think my brother-in-law, Brian, used to tell the story too, because apparently I'd get out there and I'd be like, come play. Come play. Nobody ever did. They had a lot of friends through the fence.
There was the time that Beth Krebs, on a dare no doubt, licked the flagpole in winter. She had her tongue pretty solid to it. It was so bad. The teacher had to run to get water to help unfreeze it, and it still involved blood. It was very painful. Now, this recess equipment that was there had been purchased by the parents' donations, and when the centralization was going on, the schools, the central administration tried to take all this equipment back. But the parents mobilized, they got together, and they won. And that equipment most of it is still right there. It's behind the building right now. Oh, most of the games we played are still the same varieties that people play today. Dodgeball. In those days, you could aim for the head. Jump rope, softball, basketball, blind man's golf, tag, peg, fox and geese. I'm not really sure what that one was.
The fox and geese is in the snow. You'd make trails around, and the fox would chase the goose. You know, when they caught them, then the goose became fox.
The most unusual game that was played there was Anthony Over, and I remember playing this one. We had two teams, each on opposite sides of the school. We took turns throwing the ball over the school. You couldn't see where that ball was coming from, but if you caught it, you got to run around the school and tag people. And if you tagged them, they had to come over to your side. And the neighbors were always very fond of this game. And they would periodically put a stop to it. And people would forget after a while. We could play again. Recess, the way I remember, was a couple times a day. So we had 2 times a day and maybe lunchtime too to play. And
Boy, I think she gets an A also. Even though Alex Lunney is new in the community, he's going to tell us about something always important, the necessities.
So anybody who was there, feel free to add on to what I'm saying. This is all gathered from everything that I compiled. So speaking of necessities, if anybody has to go, we should use the same method we have. If you have to go number 1, you raise your hand. Finger up. If you have to go number 2, well, you put those 2 fingers up. And apparently, too, you then would write it on the blackboard. I'm not sure what they did with that information. So apparently everybody really liked to wait till recess. They use the bathroom if they have a bathroom. Now, of course, there were 2 outhouses back in the day before. 3 or 4 holders, as was recalled, and apparently there were objects of Halloween pranksters back in the day, especially the women's. So it said that part of the same pranksters were the people that ran the turtle of the flagpole at the North Chatham School as well. I just thought it was a real one, not your turtle.
Yeah.
So in the 30s, when the indoor plumbing was put in, and also water too. There was a hand pump outside at the back corner of the schoolhouse. We talked about heat a little bit and the delivery of coal. There had been a hot pellet stove in the room as well. So let's see, Margaret Irish recalled there being a little bit of a race thank you for the world so sweet. Thank you for the birds that sing. Thank you, God, for everything. So the kids who live near the school, I'm sure, like Vicki, would go home for lunch. And then the other ones would bring lunch to school. Some of those are familiar, you know, a bologna or egg salad sandwich, tuna fish, of course the old peanut butter and jelly, but one of them listed here was cream cheese and olives. Was that popular? Was okay. I guess I'm just too young. At lunchtime, after that lunch, we could go over to George Walker's store called Dorothy Ostrowski and buy ice cream in Dixie cups with a picture of an actor or an actress on the inside lid. Or maybe a fudgesicle, which might reveal a free on the end of the stick. Vicki mentioned centralization, so apparently that's when hot lunches came to the North Chatham School. They were brought in from Malaysia. Many people who attended later years mentioned snack time in the morning. In the 50s, teachers sent kids to the Lee's store next door to pick up graham crackers and milk in individual cardboard cartons. And who wants to guess how many cents? 3 cents. And at snack time, the teachers would read stories to us. They're not necessarily related to necessities, but something that interesting that came up was that New York State had a literacy test for voting from 1923, and then which that ended in 1965 and was abolished by the Federal Voting Rights Act. And people remembered adults coming to the school to take the reading test. They would need that proof that they could read at a second grade level before they could vote. So I thought that was interesting as well. But Lynn, back to you.
We got gold stars on the middle of the forehead going. Now, Richie Deyo's here. He attended the school. I don't know whether he wants to come up or not. You want to come up?
Oh, okay. Must have been something you said.
Did he raise a finger?
Yeah, I can't tell you your tone.
We don't have a board to write it on.
Lynn, I just want to warn you not to tell the stories about Bill Lansley and Julie Stever.
So, Richie, can you tell us anything about the beginning of the school day?
No, I hate school.
So he's wiped out the memories?
Yeah, that's all right. Now, I was just thinking of those where we got there when the first thing you.
Close.
Oh, okay. After God settled down, like the leeches, something I just don't do anymore. And everybody had their assignments, and the teachers, which are wonderful, just got each class, 4 classes in each room. Get your lessons out for the day, and then you start studying. And one thing you had to do then was you have to concentrate on your own work, because the teacher was talking to class 1, maybe you're in class 3. And if you didn't study your own attention, you didn't learn anything about your own lesson. That was something that you had to do. Yes?
Even though you hated school, how about any of the academics? There was math you hated.
I never did math. Now, there was 2 things. There was arithmetic. You hear much about now, right? And mathematics. my favorite subjects always was geography, and I was pretty good at English too. And to show you how much I liked geography so much, I kept my geography book.
I think he stole the damn book. Did you steal the book?
And I think this was the 5th grade, I'm really not sure, or 5th grade, one of my possessions. No, we didn't steal the books, the parents would buy the books. And then, one of our best part of the school day was recess. And also we had other activities in school. Singing was one of the best things, and these are not the books that we had. Of course, this was World War II times when I was in school. So we had a pretty song book. And I don't know how we got these. I didn't see them for the right. One thing I was talking about, what teacher had 4 grades in one school? And kids were saying, I think they are now, but the way they were growing up was different. There was more discipline at home. For their manners, respect the elders, the teachers, and that was started at home. As these teachers didn't have a lot of disciplining the kids because, yeah, you knew the way they were supposed to act, except for some of them.
I can't really hear you very well. None of us can hear what he's saying.
Try holding that up.
Up here, I had a big mouth.
Talk louder and.
I remember, I always called her Martha Worthington, but I guess that wasn't her name, was it? I don't know. Anyway, she was my favorite teacher there, and I can remember very distinctly some of the kids that came to school back then were from really poor families. It wasn't all the welfare stuff there is nowadays. And the kids came and they didn't have very good clothes. I remember this very distinct class one day was young student there, and he had some, his clothes with some wear holes in them. I remember saying, you go home today and you tell your mother, you come to school, you got 2 things. You gotta have clean clothes and no holes. Houses are okay, but clean clothes and no holes. So I can somehow remember that distinctly.
Well, I think, anything else?
Lynn,
I got it there.
could we just know what years those of us that went were there? Because I know Rich was there, but he's younger than I am. But
What years were you at the school? Oh, now we're gonna push his pants.
I graduated from the 8th grade. That's another story. When I graduated, there was 2 students in the 8th grade. 1949.
So what years were you in the North Chatham School? What years were you in the school? I was there from till 48, and you must have still been there after me. What year did you leave down there?
I graduated in 49.
1949. He left in
49.
He graduated in 49.
Oh, I thought you said 29.
subtract that 41, I must have been in school there that day. Yeah,
World War II.
While we're discussing years, I'll just say that I was in 48. There were 4 of us in our 8th grade graduating class, and one of them was my brother who had stayed back.
One other thing I remember, Hughie Arnold had the big farm up here in the corner. Also delivered coal around town. And he used to bring, of course, down to school, they had a coal furnace. And he wouldn't tell his teacher, he wouldn't know anybody, but all of a sudden he would show up to deliver a load of coal. He had a truck with a crank lift on it. No hydraulics back in those days. Now, I remember Hughie, as everybody called him. Hubert out there cranking this thing around and around and around and around to get this body to go up. And he had a metal chute, went down through the window in the foundation, down to the basement of the school. And when he cranked this thing up and that coal finally let loose, it made such a racket that went down. The teachers had to stop teaching for about 10 minutes because you couldn't hear a thing in the school. You remember that? Oh, what a racket that made. But I still remember that happening. Yeah. So anyway, I graduated in 49. Bruce Clark, his actually first name was John. Not Bruce, anybody didn't know that. And Mrs. Worthington, I guess, I don't know, award us or whatever, took us up to the Saratoga battle field on a field trip.
Wow.
After that.
Great trip.
So I thought that was really, really nice of her.
Wow.
Okay, now, her book is so complete and so wonderful, it covers just about everything else I had to say in there. Yeah, really. So, credit you, and you did a wonderful job. Anything else?
That's it. I think Richie might get an A+. There are stories of special subjects, teachers reading to the classes and singing. Richie's older brother, Russ Deyo, remembered singing the Erie Canal song while they were studying New York State history. Now, if anybody wants to join in, it went, low bridge, everybody down, low bridge, going through a town. You'll always know your neighbor, you'll always know your pal, if you ever navigated on the Erie Canal. That's it, see? I think we got some social studies A+s right here with that singing. Good Night Ladies, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean were 2 songs Whitney Irish recalled singing with Mrs. Greenman as the teacher. The very first time I ever heard the Christmas song Silver Bells was when Mrs. Caldwell sat down at the piano in the big kids' room and played it for us to sing. George Woodward of Blossom Farm, I think that was the name, on Woodward Road, had migrant workers come to pick his apples. Some students, particularly, I recall one, the waiter's family, Lottie and Johnny. Johnny had a most amazing voice. You know, we all sung, but Johnny had this beautiful, beautiful voice that touched all of us. In my mind's eye, I can still see Johnny standing up there in front of the class, just singing his heart out. These migrant worker children would only be at our school for a couple of months. And I only think they were there a couple of years. But he left a lasting impression on me. Now Linda Romeo wants to share some memories of teachers.
Actually, I'm going to start with a quote from somebody present, Rich Deyo. Rich Deyo. Mrs. Bashford was old, skinny, and always sucking on Luton's cough drops. She had eyes in the back of the head. When she was writing on the blackboard, she knew what every kid who was goofing off. And of course, it was always the same ones. Not me. I get it. This is from Betty Montrose Lasota. Mrs. Bashford was always sucking on cough drops. This is from Carol Davis Pinkowski. Mrs. Bashford always seemed to have a cold. I learned later that she had TB. This is from Whitney Irish. Mrs. McDonald was a very attractive young woman. Two prominent locals often found an excuse to stop by the school to see her. They were the lone trustee, Arthur Scott, and Clifford Graham. This is from Audrey Lansley Burrell. Mrs. McKinney cried all the time because her husband was killed in World War II. It was a very sad time for all of us. And from Perry Potter. Mrs. Hall, I was the teacher's pet and kissed her goodbye every day.
Two ways for Linda today. Now, Carol Desmond's here, and she was a student, and I wonder if she has something to share with us.
Sure. I don't have any books, nothing written down.
That's okay.
Just recollections.
Hold it close.
Close. I started in school, I believe, in 52. 52. And I was in the first grade, but I was 4 years old. And I sat in the left-hand back of the room, so I had plenty of time to look out the window all day long, or sleep. My sister, Mary, was in the same class, and my sister Mary, I don't know if she had ants in her pants or just wanderlust or whatever it was, but Mrs. Douglas took to taking the sashes of her dress and tying her to her chair.
I remember.
Yes. Lynn was in the same room that I was. I was there when we were 3 and 3. I was in the little room. And my brother was in the big room. Let's see. One of my favorite memories, and I don't know why this sticks out so much, is that at Christmas we were going to make candles for our parents or someone in our family. I remember having a string with a little weight on it. The whole class would walk around the whole classroom and come back up to the front and dip the string in the wax. So this took quite a long time. I don't know if
Miss Minot.
I don't know. Okay. I don't know if it took the day or the week or whatever it was. By the time I got the candle home, it was cracked and broken and everything else. And one of the things I really couldn't stand was dunking for apples. At 4 years old, how do you get your mouth around an apple?
In the water.
In the water. Right. I think I remember somebody pulling my head back up or something. Mrs. Douglas, loved her. I can't imagine being in that classroom with anyone else. The flower dresses, the black lace-up shoes with the short heels, and she was one of those ladies, don't be offended anyone here, I hope, that when she walked, you could hear her stockings go. But she was always well dressed. And Hopkins burgers, they were in trouble all the time. That I can remember.
They were a regular squad.
They were a squad. And Mrs. Caldwell was in the big room. And she was I don't remember too much, but I know she was tall and buxom and had curls on and smelled very good. Smelled very good. I think she wore different kind of shoes though. I don't think she had those old lady shoes.
No.
And when she started on that piano, didn't matter what classroom you were in, and we were all singing the same songs. What else? I remember being on that playground, the infamous playground, but I was kind of small. I remember walking by the swings and being kicked on the chest by Karen Linebaum. I don't know if somebody had to take me home or give me smelling salts or whatever, but I'll never forget that. And of course, I also did something really stupid. I put my tongue on the railing and went up to the school. And screaming and yelling, and they came out with water, warm water and everything else to try to get my tongue off there. And it did hurt. What else? Walking from school up to Rains Park for our little summer get-together. We would all, the whole school, walking up the street, with our bags or whatever.
At the end of school.
At the end of school.
Like a field day.
Yes, it was a big picnic. And that was such a beautiful park. When I moved and came back as an adult, I said, where did it go? It was gorgeous. I remember the sundial and the gazing balls and everything was so beautiful. Let me see if I can think of anything else. Was there a Mr. Metzger?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we didn't have him. He was in the big room when we were in the little room.
Right.
And then he was gone.
Okay. I just wondered, where did your family live when you were in? My family lived on the north side of the post office. The house that's vacant or something now. And I would sit in that little window that faced the post office and see everything that went on in there. Including getting our coal delivered. I would sit in the window and it would be and filth all the I remember Mrs. Midge riding her horse down to pick up her mail, which was a pretty big trip. But I loved the school. It was, I didn't know I loved it then. I love it now. I tell everybody I went to a 2-room schoolhouse and they say, oh my God. It was beautiful. And when it was closed, and I found out one day that it was up for sale. So I came running out here and asking Alberta, she had all the information. She said, oh, it's just been sold. Anyways, that's my story. I don't know what I did in terms of learning. I remember the alphabet. I think I did a lot of time with the alphabet and the numbers and coloring. Okay.
Another right choice.
I had lots of memories of Hubert too. Yeah.
Lynn? Yes.
I just want to say that from the time that I went, I left in 48, and then she says she started in 52, which was when I graduated high school, and things, you can, just listening to this, you can see how things changed from when we went in the 40s, and then they were still going there in the 50s and 60s.
Absolutely.
We still had fun and wore dresses.
Vicki,
I also, one other thing, Jimmy Barker's birthday was like a holiday. His mother, Rose Barker, very beautiful woman, very, stylish, flamboyant. I remember polka dot dresses. She would come down the road, all the way from up by where the thruway bridge is, in her convertible,
with cupcakes for the whole school and all kinds of other goodies. So Jimmy's birthday was a big holiday.
Big deal. Vicki, do you want to tell us something about discipline at the school?
Oh, why does everybody pick on me?
Well, if the shoe fits,
Thank you. Oh, I think you already know, but I'm the granddaughter of Mary Arnold. When I attended, Mary was no longer a teacher at the school, but she substituted. One day when she was teaching, I was either needed reprimanding or something just didn't go my way. I don't remember really what was bothering me, but I went under the teacher's desk and just cried. I sat way there in the back, and I would not come out. Graham tried to coax me out every which way, but I would not budge. I spent the rest of that day under her desk. Another time, I must have been in 2nd grade or so, the teacher was busy with another class, and we had at that time, not this desk, but we had a desk that the front part of it went up. We've had those described, but I think we might have one in our attic, I don't know. I'll have to look around. And the teacher was busy. So we pushed our desk to the very back, lifted up the front, giving some sort of semblance of privacy. And I got my very first kiss. I don't remember his name. I received no punishment, and I thought that I got away with it. But I was not allowed to have my desk at the very back of the room anymore. Mary wrote Tobias Arnold, Graham. She was just the sweetest, patient, loving woman. She was one of 13 children, born to George Tobias and Emma Church. And the Tobiases have had a long history here in New York, first noted around 1640s and in Niagara up here by the early 1700s. Mary Tobias Arnold, was a member of the library board, erecting the new library in 1945. She was a faithful disciple all her life and taught in the church. Personally, I was never hit by a teacher. Others know getting a ruler over their hand when their penmanship was not exact. Mary Lou Johnson Casey recalls being spanked. Marjorie Dorn Gilmore she says, once I was talking and Mrs. Hall pulled me by the bow on my dress. It tore. I refused to go home until she sewed it. I know that there was a dunce chair, and you could spend some time sitting there, and sometimes you'd be out in the hall. But getting sent home was really a dire consequence in those days. And I want to read you one selection from page 25 of Lynn's book. And this came from Ira Junie Stever. It's called Good Punishment Gone Bad. One day, Ira, for lack of something better to do, shot his pencil at the ceiling with a rubber band. As luck would have it, a piece of plaster dropped from the ceiling to the floor. Mrs. Bashford was something far from pleased. It was serious punishment at that time to be sent home from school. That day, poor Junie got sent home. As luck would have it, that was the day that the horse barn behind the church burned. Now, many will recall that the fire engine was housed right next to the school. You know where that, right in back there, that little building. Ira got to ride on the fire engine and crank the siren while he waved to his fellow students. That's all I know.
I guess she gets what would it be, a D for deportment? We're running close on time. We've got a little more to do, and we're thinking about scrapping it. Let me have a show of hands. keep going, or are we ready to wrap up? Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
What time is it?
10 after 2.
2:12.
10. David, do you have some things to say?
Oh, were you going to introduce me?
Oh yeah. Was I going to introduce you? Well, some of you may know David from his part in the community talent shows. He lives in the house next door to the store, which has 2 apartments in it now, and it's next door to the school, which is 2 apartments. I think he has an introduction, but I don't see the people who he was going to.
I'll take care of it.
Okay.
All right.
I'm David Felton, and my wife, Susan Felton, is in the back there. And we live 2 doors up from the school. And, oops.
That's the pigtail bag.
Nothing weird. I want to say that I was going to talk about neighbors, and there's this book, by the way, is great. This is a beautiful book. It just takes you back in time, and as you can tell, some of that time is people who lived that time are here with us. I lived that time too, but I didn't go to school here. I went to school in Altadena, California, and I don't remember anything about it at all, really. Our school song was to the tune of Old Black Joe. I don't know if that's true. Anyway, I just want to say, I don't know if the Bolins are here, but I met the neighbors who live in the school 2 doors down just the other day. And Adam and Amy Boleyn. Amy is Adam's sister. She lives on one side of the school. And I don't know if it's a big or little room. And she's like around 28. She's the same age as my daughter, who lives 2 doors up, Grace, and with us. And they're the nicest people. I hadn't met them before, and they're just really sweet. And they both, I think work, I think he works in some financial, with the state or something, and she works for the state and the county, but he told me he wants to be a stand-up comedian, although he had very little to say, so, but he got the standing-up part down. And she is thinking about maybe being an actress, but they are wonderful people, and they live in the school now, and I asked them if there's any, if they're aware of it as a school inside, and it's been made over so well that there really isn't anything, except she said that the playground equipment is still in the back. So that's kind of cool, but, and they were going to be here, and they really, they may have had to work or something like that, because they really are interested in being part of the community, and they're new neighbors to me, and these, in this chapter in this book, I'm just reading from the book basically, but Lynn read from it and she wrote the damn thing. So I mean, it's just a thing. But mainly the chapter on neighbors is really about the store next door. The store was a good neighbor throughout the years. Fred Idleman ran the store during the time that the Irish boys were in school. He thought that Lee Irish looked like a little German and nicknamed him Ludwig. The nickname Lud stuck with him for as long as he was in the North Chatham School. At some point, Mr. Idleman traded the store and residence with Jesse Walker for his house on Barker Hill Road, so they just traded houses. And the Coca-Cola truck driver, dressed in a white uniform with red Coca-Cola lettering on the shirt, stopped by Walker's store regularly to deliver soda pop. Carol Davis Pinkowski remembers that each September the driver would stop by the school and leave a supply of Coca-Cola pencils for everyone. Do we have any of those? Did you get one?
I don't know. I don't have any mementos.
Oh, well, that's okay? You are a memento. Around the 1930s, Jesse Walker ran the store. It was interesting to hear Dorothy DeWitt hop and tell about Jesse growing mink in cages behind his store and adjacent into the schoolyard. The children would go there to see the little critters. Gus and little critters, I quote directly from Lynn. Around the 1930s, Jesse Walker ran the store. It was interesting to hear Dorothy DeWitt hop and tell about Jesse growing. Oh, I just read that. Gus and Lillian Gardner ran the store in the 1940s and 50s. They were a sweet and friendly couple who always treated the school children well. I still have a wonderful doll that was in their store window at Christmas time one year. You still have that? You guys still have that? Yeah.
Of course you do. I should have brought
You should have brought the doll's pigtail. For a lot of families, there wasn't much money to spare, so they go to the store for a piece of candy or some other treat was really a big deal. Now, I will say that we live 2 doors up, so I know a little bit about, I'll get to that. In fact, it was in the 1950s that George and Winnie Lee bought the store. When they moved to town, it was exciting, as there were 5 new children in the neighborhood. It was sad when Mr. Lee died. Mrs. Lee continued to run the store for a number of years. Sally Groves clerked at Lee's stores. It was fun to go there at noon and spend a few pennies on something special. Does this ring a bell with anybody? I don't know. Oh, it does, yeah. As I have read the letters that make up the collection of recollections, it seems to me that there were different folks who lived directly south of the school, and most of them had no children. Oh, well, this is a paragraph about how unpleasant some of those neighbors were, because they didn't have kids, so they didn't like the fall wind. I don't know. But there's some nice people who live there now. Not only was the store on the north side of the North Chatham School property, but there was also the small garage that housed the fire truck. And that today is the workshop of Peter Judge, who moved in after Rick Werway moved out. And he has converted that into his studio where he makes these beautiful coffee tables and little things out of wood, but then they're painted. He does this thing with copper on top and then paints on it, but he's working there all, oh yeah, I know. But he works there late at night. He has light on, and has a really fabulous store. I won't go into the part where they came from. My wife's sister went to school with me. And on top of that building is sort of a frame that housed the fire bell when the fire truck went out, I guess. So that was part of it. And Whitney Irish remembers watching the new fire engine being backed into the firehouse about 1926. Russell Deyo, I should be saying that wrong, told me the village fire alarm box was mounted on a pole near the school. One day someone broke the glass and set fire alarm siren off. No one would fess up. So Mrs. Bashford kept all the boys after school. Mystery unsolved. Do you know now who did that? No, you're not. You're not talking. So anyway, and also I remember Rick Werwitz was making over one of the bathrooms in that store building and found a big Coca-Cola sign or something like that behind the wall. So history lives on. I'm done.
Did we turn this off? Is it on?
Yep.
Thanks, David. Let's see. Did he get an A or an A plus? I think we'll go for an A plus. Well, Jim Ring recalled the big deal that it was to move from the little room to the big room. Don Wilcox had sort of a different recollection. He said, I remember walking Miss Minot home from school and thinking I might ask her to marry me. Alas, she moved away. Or we moved away, he said. Sharing Ed Light's recollection with you, I feel is very important. He said, What stands out in my memory was Mrs. Bashford and how capable she managed her 4 classes. While very strict and firm, she was very fair. She indeed was an excellent teacher, one who will always be remembered as one of my very best that I can recall in my lifetime experience. It was truly an exceptional opportunity for me to receive her guidance and instruction one that I appreciate to this day, end quote from Ed. Bruce Kramer, a teacher himself, wrote, "My best memory is of Mrs. Douglas," there we go again, Mrs. Douglas, and reading Charlotte's Web to us on a hot, late spring day, while her Irish setter, Molly, walked around every desk, checking on us, before settling down next to the teacher's desk in the front of the room. Mrs. Douglas's voice and inflection made no illustration necessary. She was a master at her craft, end quote. I would guess that most of you have had some of the O'Kenny's barbecue sauce or ice cream O'Kenny's, right? Well, when we had this school party years ago that George pulled off, that wonderful event, afterwards I heard David and Kenny talking, and I had not heard this story ahead of the book. But Kenny and Dave were going on about one day Kenny was doing a tow, because he had a tow truck business. He was doing a tow in the area, and he drove by the school, and he saw Dave's vehicle, and he said, "You know, I've been going to stop there for ages. I've got a question. And when I come back, I'm going to stop." So sure enough, he stopped, and he walked in, and there was David. And he said, "Have you ever found a bracelet, an ID bracelet?" He said, "One day I thought I was so cool with my bracelet. And I was throwing it up and catching it, and I threw it up, and it hit the wall, and it slid down, and it went behind the blackboard." He said, "Did you by any chance find it?" And I'd love to ask David to say what he said, but I'm not sure he will. He's smiling at me and shaking his head. David said, "This morning I took the blackboard down and handed him his bracelet." To close the program, I want to share the words of Marky Heiserman Lane, who was in my class. She grew to be a therapist and now lives in Florida. She said, it was great fun to walk to and from school, especially in a village where you knew who lived in each house, and like the theme of the TV show Cheers says, where everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came. There was never a sense of stronger belonging and connectedness for me than when I attended the North Chatham School and lived in that wonderful village. I know that Marky's thoughts are echoed in generations of former students. Thank you all